Hey guys, tonight we slip through the hush of an empire, where the stars above Istanbul shimmer like dust scattered over velvet, and something warm and doughy is being smuggled through the alleys. This isn't your average midnight snack run. No vending machines, no glowing drive-thrus, just a tired baker, a flickering oil lamp, and a law that says, don't even think about it. You press yourself against a cold stone wall as a janissary patrol passes, their polished boots echoing over the cobbles. Somewhere nearby, you catch the scent of cinnamon, yeast, and soot, a signal that someone is risking punishment for fresh simmet. It smells amazing. It smells forbidden. And yes, you're following your nose. You round a corner and duck beneath a sagging wooden awning. Here, under layers of linen, a baker lifts the lid of a brazier. The embers glow like watchful eyes. He doesn't speak. He nods once. You hand over 2 copper coins, and in return you receive something soft, round, and steaming. You bite in, flour, sesame, heat, and now you're part of the problem. Because here's the thing. In the 16th and 17th centuries, the Ottoman Empire had strict rules about when and how food could be made, sold, or eaten, especially after dark. The city of Istanbul, then Constantinople, or as some locals still called it, Saadete, the Gate of Felicity, pulsed with life by day, but by night it was supposed to sleep. Not because people weren't hungry, but because officials feared the night. It made people unpredictable. It was where secrets whispered and movements organized, and nothing organized people quite like food. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, leave a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. Midnight snack time? Or breakfast in disguise. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're still chewing as you move deeper into the warren of the old city. Lamps flicker behind grilled windows. A cat slinks between your feet, and overhead, the call to prayer is still hours away. You pass a shuttered bakery, the kind that makes pide flatbread by the stack during daylight. But at this hour, it's been sealed under a waxed stamp of the city's inspectors. Break that seal and you could be fined. Or worse, your name written in the ledger of the Mumtasib, the imperial market warden. See, the Ottoman state took its food regulations seriously, especially at night. Fires had a habit of spreading through the wooden city like gossip through a hammam. A stray coal, an overturned pot, and suddenly whole districts were gone. And so, after a certain hour, bakers weren't just discouraged from working, they were outright forbidden. Some historians say the laws were strictest after the Great Fire of 1660, which torched around 2/3 of the city. Others argue these rules were older, tied to fears of crime, sedition, and what you might politely call nighttime plotting. But here's the twist. Despite the laws, people still baked. They still fried. They still sold warm treats from secret ovens and alley griddles. Because hunger doesn't punch a clock. And the Ottoman night was alive with quiet rebellion. Sugar-dusted, sesame-coated, and dipped in thick, clotted cream. And just like that, you hear a noise. Behind a set of shutters, someone's whispering. You lean in. A code word, a reply, a click of a latch. You could swear someone just handed someone else a paper-wrapped bundle. Was that Borek? You retreat into the dark. You're not ready to get caught, not yet. But you're hooked. The Ottoman Empire, it turns out, wasn't just prayer and palaces. It was a place where the night had rules, the hungry had tricks, and snack time could get you in serious trouble. So keep walking, keep listening, keep chewing if you dare. Because this story, it's only just begun. You take a left, then another left, and now you're in a narrower alley. One that smells of cooling ash and something faintly sweet, maybe dates or anise. A cat jumps out of a trash bin, startles you, then vanishes. Above you, laundry flaps from balcony to balcony like lazy flags of defiance. You're walking through the quiet hours of an empire that preferred its nights asleep, its mouths closed and its ovens most definitely cold. But you're not alone. The bakeries here breathe like sleeping animals. They seem silent, dormant. But look closer, and you'll see the signs. Ash too warm, a soot line still fresh, a child's slipper near the side door, someone still working, someone still baking, and someone's doing it past the point where the Sabaha Kada bell should have rung. That bell, it wasn't just symbolic, it was literal. A designated curfew bell tolled through the night in various neighborhoods of Istanbul to signal the legal end of bakery operations. That's right, if you heard that bell and your oven was still going, you'd better shut it down fast. Fires, fines, and sometimes flogging awaited those who didn't. The irony, of course, was that many bakers had to keep baking past curfew. The imperial demand for fresh bread in the morning was relentless. Mosques ordered hundreds of loaves for prayer-goers. The palace demanded bread that hadn't cooled for more than minutes. And the wealthy, they wanted warm rolls and spiced breakfast pastries delivered before the cock crowed. So what was a baker to do? Well, bake quietly. Don't let the chimney smoke, keep the door latched, and above all, trust no one. Because the Ottoman Empire had a fascinating class of people called mubiler, informants. These were everyday citizens, often fellow tradesmen, who reported nighttime infractions to the mubiler. Some did it for a few extra coins, some out of genuine loyalty, and some just liked watching other people get into trouble. You pass a small bakery tucked into a stone alcove. It looks abandoned, the sign is missing, but then you catch it, a wisp of flour dust blowing under the door. Someone's moving inside. You crouch low. There's a rhythm to it. Scrape, sweep, silence. Then the faintest poof, dough into fire. It smells illegal. It smells like fresh bread. Ottoman bureaucrats were deeply obsessed with food, especially bread. The empire's price control system, known as the Narth, determined the fixed prices of hundreds of goods. Bread was top priority. If a baker made loaves too small, too light, or too expensive, he was punished. If he baked them too early or too late, same story. There are accounts of bakers being publicly shamed, whipped, or even exiled for tampering with these sacred rules of grain. And yet, they kept doing it, because the system was both rigid and broken. Flour delivery was inconsistent. Water was rationed. Fuel, especially hardwood, could be hard to find. And customers were just as inconsistent. Some wanted salt, some didn't. Some preferred crusty loaves, others threatened lawsuits over burnt bottoms. You'd lose your mind trying to please them all. So bakers bent the rules. A little night fire here, a secret second shift there. Historians still argue whether these nocturnal bakers were heroic providers or selfish firebugs. What we do know is that the empire never managed to stamp them out completely. They were like flour between floorboards, always there, always rising. You pause beneath an overhang, the night pressing down like velvet. Somewhere far off, a rooster crows too early, another lawbreaker. You think back to that bell, the one that signaled baking must stop. It had to be rung by a Sabaha Kadar Nobetsisi, a kind of night watch officer responsible for curfew enforcement, except sometimes he didn't show, or he rang late, or he rang it twice. Some neighborhoods got no bell at all. Conspiracies, laziness, miscommunication, historians aren't sure. Some suggest the inconsistencies were deliberate to trap, offend. Others say corruption. After all, if you paid the bell ringer enough, maybe your street got an accidental extension. That's the thing about empires. They love laws. They love rules. But when night falls and hunger creeps in, enforcement gets fuzzy and bribery gets baked right into the crust. You move again, quieter now. Somewhere behind you a latch clicks open. Someone's selling bread. You want to turn back. You want to try it. But you also want to see what else is hiding in the darkness of this edible empire. After all, bread is just the beginning. And in the shadows of the next street there's a sound. Cups clinking, a bubbling hiss, and soft, forbidden laughter. It's the sound of coffee. Midnight coffee. And oh boy, that's where things really heat up. You press on toward that clinking sound, soft and rhythmic, like ceramic teeth chattering in the cold. The alley turns, and there it is, a glow, a warm orange fuzz around a half-shuttered door. You peek through the crack and see them. Men hunched over low tables, cups in hand, steam rising like the last gasp of a secret. You found a cavaillon, a coffee house, but not just any coffee house. This one is open past curfew. That makes it not just suspicious, but potentially criminal. Congratulations, you're now a passive participant in one of the most scandalous trends of the Ottoman Golden Age. See, back in the 16th century, coffee wasn't just a beverage. It was a problem. It entered the Ottoman world via Yemen, probably by way of Sufi mystics who used it to stay awake during late-night zikr ceremonies. At first it was welcomed, even admired. It sharpened the mind, cleared the senses. Poets loved it, clerks adored it. And the Sultan's officials, they feared it. Why? Because coffee houses were where people gathered, where they talked, debated, argued, schemed, plotted, laughed at ministers, recited satirical poetry. One historian calls them proto-parliaments, which is a fancy way of saying they were places where people started getting ideas. Ideas were dangerous. So in 1656, Grand Vizier Koporulu Mehmed Pasha issued a full-on crackdown. Coffee houses were shut down, their owners were fined, sometimes whipped, some houses were burned. The coffee itself, banned. Temporarily, yes, but banned nonetheless. Think about that. A government trying to outlaw sitting and talking over hot drinks. You might not survive that kind of policy today. But here's where it gets fun. Coffee refused to go quietly. It slipped through customs. It was roasted in basements, brewed in alleyways, carried in tin kettles by teenage runners who were paid not just to deliver, but to keep their mouths shut. You duck into the coffee house just as someone closes the shutters. Inside, the air is thick, smoke from tobacco and narghile, the roasted scent of Arabica beans, the heavy perfume of sandalwood oil dabbed behind a merchant's ears. A man plays the lute in the corner. Another scribbles in a worn ledger, nodding to himself. Everyone pretends this is normal. On the table next to you, a tiny cup, no handle, painted with red flowers. It's filled to the brim with a thick, nearly black liquid. You sip. It's bitter, earthy, with a hint of cardamom. And yes, it hits like an imperial decree. to the brain. Suddenly, you're listening more closely. A man at the next table is whispering about tax policy. Another curses a local judge. Someone jokes about a pasha's daughter eloping with a halva vendor. You try not to laugh, because they don't know you, and if you laugh at the wrong moment, well, you could be a spy, or they could be. That's the shadow of the car vein. It wasn't just a snack stop. It was a minefield. The authorities knew that. They infiltrated coffee houses with informants, disguised as merchants or travelers. You might think you're talking to a fisherman from Uskudar, but surprise, he's taking notes for the Subasi. And the punishments? Oh, they got creative. One sultan, Murad IV, famously roamed the city at night in disguise, catching violators personally. If he caught you drinking coffee after curfew, he might order you beaten, or worse, executed, for coffee. Historians still argue whether Murad's famous midnight inspections were real, exaggerated, or pure political theater. But whether he walked the streets or not, fear walked in his name. Still, coffee persisted. It was addictive, sure, but more than that, it was social. In an empire as vast and stratified as the Ottomans, coffee houses were where a butcher could talk to a poet, where a sailor might quote Persian verse to a janissary. It blurred lines, it brewed revolution. And you better believe the state noticed. Aining your cup now, the ground's thick at the bottom like dark fortune-telling mud. A man across from you swirls his, then looks up. "She says you'll travel far," he murmurs, smiling, "but you'll never escape hunger." You smile back. He's not wrong. The door creaks. A gust of cool air cuts through the room. Everyone freezes. A shape moves past the window, then vanishes. Just the wind, or something worse. You decide it's time to leave. You slip through the side door, the night air biting at your neck, and head deeper into the shadows. Ahead, you hear a new sound, the sharp rattle of dried chickpeas in a tin pan, a street vendor, roasted snacks. And right behind that, the low murmur of boots, military boots. Because next on your little journey through forbidden flavor, the janissaries. And they're not just here for snacks. You turn the corner and there they are, boots planted wide, shoulders squared, sabers glinting faintly beneath the street lamps. Janissaries. Not in formation, not in battle armor, but unmistakable. Their mustaches alone would give them away, thick and precisely groomed, as if shaped with the edge of a dagger. They're gathered around a squat man with a brazier strapped to his chest, a shallow tin pan balanced on top. You catch the soft click-clack sound again as he stirs the chickpeas with a flat wooden paddle. The scent of roasted leblebi fills the alley, warm and nutty, with a hint of char. It smells safe, comforting even. But don't be fooled. Because this isn't just a snack, it's a signal. You step back into the shadows, watching. The vendor doesn't speak much. He scoops, passes, takes coins, nods, but as he moves you notice something else. He's tapping the pan a certain way. 3 beats, a pause, 2 more. A rhythm. The janissaries nod, barely perceptibly. Then one of them mutters, "Change is coming." Okay, that's definitely not about the chickpeas. See, the janissaries weren't just soldiers. They were the elite military corps of the empire, highly trained, highly feared, and highly political. Over time, they transformed from loyal royal guard into a sprawling, secretive brotherhood with their fingers in every part of city life. And food? That was one of their favorite tools. The janissaries loved roasted chickpeas, loved them, so much so that lebebi vendors were sometimes allowed to operate near their barracks even during restricted hours. Some vendors were even associated with specific janissary units. Think of them as snack delivery men and message carriers rolled into one. Where a lebebi man went, information often followed. Historians still argue whether the janissary obsession with roasted snacks was purely culinary or quietly conspiratorial. Some say it was just convenience. Leblebi was dry, portable, easy to carry on long guard shifts. Others suggest these vendors were ideal undercover agents, passing coded messages hidden under paper cones. You watch as one janissary taps his own coin on the edge of the vendor's brazier before dropping it in the pouch. A reply code, a name, maybe just a habit, you'll never know. Then someone laughs, loud, careless. It startles the birds overhead, and for a moment all the soldiers tense. One of them glances around. You duck lower into the shadows, heart thumping. The Ottomans had laws about this too, you know. Not just the sale of food, but who could sell it, when and where. Mobile vendors like this one were required to register with the local mutasip. They needed a license, a permit, sometimes a signature from the guildmaster. And heaven help you if you weren't in the right district at the right time. The empire loved paperwork almost as much as it loved minarets. But Lebemen had a habit of ignoring these rules. They drifted, wandered, popped up after curfew like mushrooms after rain. Why? Because the demand never stopped, especially among the janissaries, who kept strange hours and stranger appetites. One particularly juicy account tells of a janissary lieutenant who started an actual street war with a rival vendor over who could sell near his barracks. Another tale, more legend than history, speaks of a vendor who laced his leblebi with crushed pistachio shells to spark a mutiny. No evidence that worked, but hey, good protein. And always, just beneath the surface, politics. These soldiers weren't just snacking. They were networking, plotting, at times even planning coups. The janissaries deposed sultans more than once, and while they didn't do it with chickpeas, those late-night gatherings didn't exactly help imperial stability. The vendor is packing up now. His coals glow faintly like dying stars. He ties the money pouch to his belt, tips his cap, and disappears down a side street. The janissaries linger. One lights a pipe. Another draws something in the dust with a stick, maybe a name, maybe a symbol, maybe just boredom. You ease away. You don't want to attract attention, not from this crowd, because these are men who can kill with a look, and then order borek with the same hand. Ahead, the wind shifts again. Something sweet this time. Something burnt sugar sweet. You sniff. You pick up your pace. Because in the next alley, behind a half-lowered curtain, someone is deep frying something. And there's no such thing as a legal sugar fry-up at this hour. You're about to meet the Empire's sweet-toothed smugglers, and one inspector with a fondness for powdered sugar. You follow your nose, quickening your step. The smell thickens, honey, cinnamon, and that unmistakable whisper of hot oil clinging to night air. You're salivating now, not out of hunger, but because it smells like a festival or a bribe. You duck behind a wooden cot and peer through a narrow slit in the boards. There, just beyond a curtain hung between two shuttered shops, a woman in a red scarf is lowering globs of dough into a shallow copper pan, their edges fizzing instantly to gold. A man beside her rolls finished pieces in crushed pistachio and powdered sugar, hands moving fast, practiced. This is no amateur's operation. These two are professionals, and they're breaking the law. The Ottoman Empire had very specific rules for meat, especially after dark. Roasting lamb or beef in the open air was strictly limited. Why? Not because it was unhealthy or unclean, but because it stirred the wrong kinds of cravings. Picture this. It's midnight. You've fasted all day during Ramadan. You're trying to be pious, modest, quiet, and then, whoosh. Your neighbor lights a charcoal grill. Lamb fat hits flame. The aroma wafts into your home, your clothes, your soul, and suddenly you're not thinking about God anymore. You're thinking about kebab. The Ottomans feared this, not just the appetite, the gathering. People congregating around food, especially after curfew, meant talk. Talk turned into complaints. Complaints turned into sedition, and sultans didn't like sedition. So, there were laws. You couldn't grill meat in the open after a certain hour. You couldn't sell it from carts without special permits. And if you were caught frying sweets like lokma or helva past legal hours, you'd be fined, or worse, shut down for good. But people did it anyway. Why? Because sweet cravings don't check clocks, and because lokma was cheap, portable, and could be made with minimal noise if you knew what you were doing. Just a little splash here, a little sizzle there. No smoke, no flame, no grill. Just dough, oil, syrup, and risk. The woman in the red scarf motions to a boy crouched nearby. He darts into the dark, returning with a tiny paper pouch. She fills it, 5 pieces, maybe 6, and hands it to a waiting man in silk slippers. He doesn't even speak, just drops a coin, turns, vanishes. And just as quietly, another man steps forward. This one's wearing a tall fez and a long gray coat. Something about him feels off. He doesn't speak either. He watches, hands behind his back, eyes flicking between the friar, the sugar man, the boy. Then he takes something from his coat. A seal, a lead tag. You recognize it. The symbol of the muttasib, the inspector. But instead of shouting, instead of blowing a whistle or calling in guards, he sighs. He steps forward, takes one lokma from the tray, bites into it, slowly, like he's measuring the temperature with his tongue, and chews. Silence. Then, without a word, he sets the seal on the counter and walks away. You don't need a translator. That wasn't punishment. That was a transaction. Bribery? Possibly. Or maybe he just liked sweets. Historians still argue whether enforcement of food laws in the Ottoman Empire was truly consistent or mostly symbolic. Some say the muttasibs were relentless, tireless watchdogs of imperial order. Others argue they were bureaucratic figments, appearing only when it served a political or personal purpose. One fringe theory even suggests certain street vendors paid a monthly silence tax to specific inspectors. Not recorded, of course, just understood. And if you think that's surprising, imagine being the lokma friar herself. Every night a risk, every puff of dough a gamble, one wrong customer, one inspector in a bad mood, and you're out of business. Or worse. Still, the demand never stopped. Lokma wasn't just dessert. It was ritual. It was served at funerals, weddings, circumcision feasts, and public festivals. And when you craved it, you really craved it. Enough to sneak through alleys, whisper at corners, and hand over silver just for the chance. You wipe your fingers on your sleeve and move on. You don't want to linger. Not here, not now, not when the sugar sellers are under watch. As you round the next corner, a man in a wool vest brushes past you, muttering something about the Pasha's midnight walk. You glance up. That's new. The wind has shifted again, and now, in the distance, you hear something strange. A bell ringing once, then stopping. A signal. And just like that, the entire street seems to inhale, because in the next part of the city, a new law is about to come into play, and it starts with a curfew bell that doesn't ring the way it should. You pause beneath a crooked archway, letting the sounds fade. The sizzle of oil, the clink of cups, the laughter quickly swallowed by silence. Something feels different now. The night, which until this point had felt dense with scent and warmth, now seems to tighten. As if the city is holding its breath, you hear it again. A single bell toll, just once. No echo, no repetition. And then nothing. According to the law, that bell should have rung 3 times, evenly spaced, to signal the final curfew for baking and street food activity. It always did. It was meant to. But sometimes it didn't. That wasn't just a mistake. This is the mysterious, half-forgotten tale of the bread curfew bell, an Ottoman policy tool so simple it should have been boring, but turned out to be deliciously suspicious. The bell had a name, Sabaha Kadar Kani, the until morning bell. It was installed in various districts of Istanbul to mark the hour when baking and food preparation had to cease. Simple idea. Hear the bell, shut down your oven, stop your grilling, pack up your chickpeas. No debate, no excuses. Except people started noticing it didn't always work the same way. In some neighborhoods, the bell rang 5 minutes early, in others 20 minutes late. Sometimes it rang just once instead of 3 times, and on certain nights, especially those before imperial inspections, it didn't ring at all. You're not a conspiracy theorist, but you do know this. Ottoman bureaucracy didn't do random. If something broke the rhythm, it meant someone had decided to break it. Historians still argue whether the inconsistencies were the result of poor training, failing equipment, or deliberate manipulation. Some believe bell keepers were bribed to delay their tolls, granting bakers a few extra minutes to meet demanding orders. Others claim district governors played favorites, rewarding loyal neighborhoods with extra cooking time. One more eccentric theory suggests the bell was tied to astrological observations and was purposely shifted to avoid cooking during unlucky planetary alignments. You raise an eyebrow at that one, but who knows? The Ottoman court had official astrologers. Stranger things have happened. Tonight, though, it seems someone's silenced the bell, which means, unofficially, food prep is still legal, if you're brave enough. You round the corner and see proof, a window slit glowing faintly with orange light. The scent of honeyed syrup wafts through the cracks. A boy ducks out of the side door with a tray. Behind him, another door opens, and 2 pashas step out. Not soldiers, not food vendors, pashas, officials. And they carrying sweetmeats? You flatten yourself against the alley wall. This is the part no one writes down. Many Ottoman elite families had their own kitchens, sprawling private operations run by professional chefs and guarded recipes. But sometimes, for reasons ranging from discretion to pleasure to sheer boredom, they ordered snacks from the street. Illegal ones, after hours, under alias, which meant that a whole black market of hidden sweetmeat sellers thrived under imperial noses. You're watching a transaction now. One of the pashas hands the boy a silk-wrapped pouch. Not money, too obvious. More likely saffron or fine soap or a bolt of cloth. Barter was safer. The boy bows and disappears. One of the men opens the paper parcel, revealing squares of sizzle, a jelly-like treat made from carrot, sugar, and nuts. He tears one piece and pops it into his mouth. His companion groans with delight. The irony? These sweets weren't illegal, not technically. Cesare was sold in every market. What was illegal was the timing and the vendor's lack of license. But you can't stop trade with the law any more than you can stop a yawn with a lecture. People will always find a way to eat what they want, when they want. And the Ottoman capital, with its thousands of alleyways, courtyards, hammams, and blind corners, was a snack lover's paradise for lawbreakers. You wonder if the mutasib knows about this particular sweetmeat supplier. Probably, but as long as the bell doesn't ring and no smoke's visible above the rooftops, he can always say, "I saw nothing." You turn to go. You've had enough sugar-coated secrets for one night, but then your foot hits something. You look down, a cracked tile. Beneath it, a faint red wax seal. Just a mark, a stamp from a local guild. Another hidden oven, maybe. Or a warning? Or a signal. This area's protected. You're walking on top of an empire's secret after-hours food network. And the next alley, and smells like yogurt. But not the kind you buy in plastic tubs. This one comes in clay pots, delivered in silence, hidden under wool, and carried, you'll soon learn, by the yogurt smugglers of Galata. Your shoes crunch softly on crushed olive pits and gravel as you descend toward Galata. Once a Genoese outpost, now just a quieter district where the shadows are longer and the rules blur faster than the Bosphorus tide. The air grows thicker, not unpleasant, just tangy, milky, faintly herbal. Someone nearby is moving yogurt. And not the pale, watery kind you'd gulp down with rice. No, this is thick, clay-cooled, spoon-stood straight yogurt. Yogurt with a personality. The kind that earns loyalty. The kind that's illegal right now. You stop beneath a stone arch and wait. Moments pass. Then, quiet footsteps. A man emerges from a side alley, a huge wool cloak pulled over his head despite the spring night. Balanced on a wooden board across his shoulders are 4 clay pots, sealed with muslin and wax. The pots don't clink. They're bound tight with rags. A second man follows, hunched the same way, though younger, maybe 15. You're watching the midnight shift of a yogurt run. In theory, dairy vendors weren't forbidden by Ottoman law. In practice, after-hours dairy was an unspoken no-go, especially in Galata, where authorities suspected it of being tied to smuggling, spying, or even heretical ritual. That last part may sound silly until you learn about the Iran dervishes, a fringe sect believed to chant over yogurt for prophetic dreams. Historians still debate whether they actually existed or were the invention of an overly dramatic scribe named Mustafa. But regardless of prophecy, the empire enforced curfews on dairy vendors, ostensibly to avoid spoilage, unrest, and black market inflation. Milk turned quickly, yogurt even quicker. You didn't want stomach-churning chaos from a bad batch. Or so they said. The smugglers stop in a courtyard, shielded by ivy-covered walls. They kneel, lift the lids, check the tops. Perfect sheen. No cracking. The older one draws a thin wooden spoon from his sash, dips it in, tastes, nods. Then they do the strangest thing. They split, not together, not along the same road. One goes east, the other west. 2 routes, 2 customers, 2 escape plans. You follow the younger one. He slips through narrow lanes, stepping over cats, past bundles of rosemary left at thresholds. He passes a fountain but doesn't drink. Eventually he taps once at a wooden door, and it opens just a crack. A hand reaches out, ornate rings, long nails. The boy passes the jar, receives a single coin and something wrapped in linen. Then he's gone. That was not a random house. That was the back door of a minor palace, one of the Sarai Shikima, palaces by marriage, homes granted to in-laws and favored cousins of the Sultan, which means someone royal just bought black market yogurt. Why not just order it officially, you wonder? Because official yogurt comes with questions, receipts, taxes, documentation. This comes with deniability. A lady of the palace wants her favorite goat milk yogurt infused with thyme and chilled in river clay. She gets it. No need to explain why she's not using the court chef. No need to report it to the market office. Some say the yogurt smugglers of Galata were more than just delivery men, that they carried secrets beneath the lids, notes tucked under wax, signals scrawled inside cotton seals. The story of the White Pot Uprising is one example, though likely exaggerated. Supposedly, a janissary revolt was coordinated by passing messages between yogurt jars during Ramadan. Likely? No. Possible? You're not ready to rule anything out. There's also the case of Hussein the Spoon, a smuggler who supposedly built a fortune running yogurt for the imperial harem, using only specific clay pots handmade by his sister. Legend says he once disguised a stolen emerald inside a goat cheese ball. When the guards caught him, he claimed it was a natural mineral from the milk. They didn't buy it, but they ate it, which didn't go well. Still, the empire never quite stamped out the practice. Yogurt was simply too Ottoman. It was in every meal, on every plate, part of every medicine. You can't criminalize your own culture forever. You lean against the wall, watching the boy vanish into the night. No one else is stirring. The city has exhaled again. All you can hear are distant waves and a sleepy muezzin practicing scales in a minaret somewhere, far above. And now, finally, your stomach growls. You're not craving yogurt anymore. You want something flaky, buttery, and full of secrets. You want borak, and you're about to find out how one snack became a symbol of protest, rolled tight, spiced just right, and served to challenge an empire. You're following the scent now, caramelized onion, a whisper of lamb, the faintest trace of pepper and parsley baked into buttery folds. Borak. There's no mistaking it. You've smelled enough tonight to tell the difference between a bribe and a rebellion, and this smells like both. Ahead, beneath a low stone arch near a laundry line still dripping from the evening wash, a man kneels over a brazier. He doesn't look like a baker. His hands are too clean, his mustache too sharp, and the way he glances over his shoulder every few seconds, that's not a cook, that's a courier. The pan before him is shallow but wide. In it lie 5 golden rolls of sigara boregi, thin, crisp cylinders stuffed with cheese and herbs. But that's not all he's cooking, because next to the tray sits a folded cloth. You can see ink bleeding through the linen. That's not a menu. He lifts one borek with tongs, wraps it neatly in paper, and slips the cloth note inside before folding the corners. Then he sets it aside. The next one gets a different parcel. 2 snacks, 2 messages, 2 fates. This is protest borek. The Ottomans were no strangers to rebellion. The empire was vast, diverse, and heavily centralized, an ideal recipe for occasional unrest. But in Istanbul, Direct action was dangerous, so people got creative. Messages were smuggled in laundry bundles, meetings disguised as funerals, and yes, codes baked into snack deliveries. Boric vendors were everywhere. Their trays were wide, their papers plentiful, and their status invisible. No one suspected the cheese guy, and that made him powerful. One fringe historian, more folklorist than academic, claims that the 1622 janissary revolt that toppled Sultan Osman II was pre-signaled by a Boric seller who passed coded pastry parcels to barracks sergeants. Truth? Maybe not, but it captures something real. Boric was never just Boric. Take kolboregi, those long, snake-like spirals stuffed with minced meat and onion. Their name literally means arm borek. Some say they were nicknamed after the curled arm position of the janissaries waiting in ambush. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe that's just how memory wraps itself in pastry. You crouch behind a water barrel as the man passes off the first wrapped borek to a passing cobbler. They don't speak. Just a nod, a pouch, a snack, then gone. The second is handed to a girl in a blue headscarf who barely looks old enough to carry secrets, but she tucks the package into her sleeve and vanishes like smoke. That's the thing about the Ottoman Empire. Despite all the rules, the inspections, the muntasibs and midnight bells, there was always another layer, an undercurrent, a snack-level sedition. Because while the state tried to control food, especially at night, it couldn't stop what people made of it. A borek wasn't just a late-night treat. It was warmth, nourishment, comfort, and sometimes a pamphlet in dough form. Historians still argue about the extent of edible espionage. Were protest snacks a widespread thing, or rare flourishes passed down through dramatized stories? Some say it's overstated, that most nighttime borek was just innocent hunger. Others point to arrest records of vendors found carrying unlicensed texts and pastry carts. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, like a well-stuffed spinach roll, layers upon layers. You lean closer. The man is finished. He lifts the pan, tips out the ash, and douses the coals with water. The hiss fills the alley like applause. Then, with a practiced sweep, he gathers his cloth and tray and vanishes into the dark. You wait a moment longer, just in case. Then you step forward and find something left behind. One still warm borek. You pick it up. No paper inside, just melted cheese and mint, folded in flaky gold. You bite in, and for a moment, everything makes sense. The secrecy, the hunger, the danger, the stubborn need to eat even when it's forbidden. Then you hear footsteps behind you, not hurried, not soft, just rhythmic. You turn. Two women with baskets approach. Their aprons are damp and one's holding a long wooden paddle. Fishmongers? No, too early, too clean. Fruit sellers? Here comes the next course. Figs, fish, fines, and a whole new set of nighttime rules. You finish the last bite of borek and wipe your fingers on your sleeve just as the two women pass you. Heads down, back straight, baskets wrapped in linen and fastened with little knots. They don't look up, but one of them mutters something under her breath as she passes. You can't catch the words, only the tone. Practiced, transactional, maybe a warning. You wait a moment, then follow. They move with purpose, not the sluggishness of true vendors winding down, but the alertness of people who know they're on borrowed time. The baskets. One's got the faint smell of figs, overripe and sugar sweet, the kind that bruise easily. The other, fish, small ones, probably anchovies or hemsey, packed in salt and wrapped in fig leaves. It's past the selling hour, that much is certain, which means these women are either running a favor or dodging a fine. See, the Ottoman Empire didn't just care about what you sold, it cared when and where. The state monitored the markets obsessively, fearing fluctuations in prices or sudden spoilage scandals, and while daytime vendors operated under the sharp eye of the mutasib, nighttime sellers were either reckless or well-connected. Fruit and fish were two of the most regulated products in the imperial city. Why? Because they spoiled quickly, stank when mishandled, and sparked riots when they disappeared from the stalls. One bad shipment of anchovies, and suddenly half the city's fasting breakfast is ruined. One bruised load of figs, and a local Sufi lodge has no dessert to serve with iftar. To manage this, Ottoman law dictated strict market hours. By sunset, fish had to be either sold or salted. Fruit was to be covered or removed, and after the evening call to prayer, the selling of perishables was to stop altogether, no exception. Except there were always exceptions. You duck behind a pillar as the women approach a wooden cart draped in a plain gray cloth. A man stands there, arms crossed, a money pouch hanging low on his belt. He says nothing, just lifts the cloth. Inside you see a copper tray filled with coins of several shapes and sizes, payments already arranged. This isn't a street stall, this is a transfer post. Each woman sets her basket down. One lifts a bag from the tray, linen stitched with a red thread. She opens it, counts a few coins, then adds a few figs. The man nods. The other does the same with her fish, 2 handfuls of tiny silver bodies, lined head to tail like sleepy soldiers. She receives a different pouch. The exchange is silent, fast, practiced. You blink and it's done. The women turn and walk away, lighter by a few kilos and wealthier by a few dirhams. Historians still debate the structure of these twilight transactions. Some claim they were tolerated, even unofficially supervised, by certain guild members who doubled as after-deck regulators. Others suggest they were wholly illicit, flashes of black market brilliance that vanished before dawn. There's even an account of a district official who tried to regulate nighttime fig sales, only to discover his own cousin was the largest supplier. The fines for selling after hours weren't always severe, sometimes just coin penalties or confiscation. But when repeat offenders got bold, the punishments escalated. Confiscation of equipment, public shaming, or even temporary bans from city commerce. For women vendors, who often lacked the formal guild protections that men had, the risk was double. But so was the determination. One Ottoman diarist, an otherwise dull bureaucrat named Selal Bey, once noted, "The women who sell figs after dark are not to be trusted. They smile like saints, but price like thieves." You're guessing he lost a bargaining match. You edge closer to the cart after they leave. Just a few coins remain, and a single fig, split, overripe, its insides glowing amber in the moonlight. You leave it untouched. Something about it feels sacred. As you turn to go, you hear a quiet hiss. A whisper, really. "Hey, you there?" It's the man from the cart. He doesn't move, just flicks his eyes toward the empty alley. "You want something warm?" You hesitate. "Rice," he says. "Real pilaf, saffron, chestnuts, maybe raisins." Your stomach growls audibly. He grins. "You'd better come quick. The fire's still lit." for now. And just like that, you're back on the scent trail, this time chasing the comfort of pilaf, the forbidden flicker of fire, and the threat of a visit from the fire code enforcers. Because even rice has rules, you follow him. The fig man, if that's what he is, leads you past a crumbling cistern, under a moonlit archway where ivy weeps from the stones, and into what looks like a carpenter's shed. Inside, no wood, no tools, just a low table, a soot-stained wall, and an iron pot perched over glowing coals. The air is heavy with saffron and roasted nuts. "Sit," he mutters, barely looking back. "But don't speak loud." You don't. You sit cross-legged on a wool rug and watch as he stirs the pilaf. Long grains glistening with clarified butter, studded with chickpeas and chestnuts. Raisins cling to the rice like forgotten jewels. It smells like winter festivals, or childhood, or someone else's memory entirely. Then the fire pops. Both of you freeze. It's just a coal shifting, nothing more. But in Ottoman Istanbul, fire was never just fire. It was threat. It was chaos. It was the ruin of neighborhoods in a single gust of wind. And the empire never forgot it. The Great Fire of 1660 burned for over 2 days. They say it swallowed 280,000 homes and nearly every wooden structure in the city's core. Entire districts reduced to ash. The smell lingered for weeks. After that, fire became not just a fear, it became policy. Which is why cooking at night, especially with open flame, was a dangerous and punishable act. Not because the food was a problem, but because the fuel was. The Ottoman fire code, such as it was, forbade any unlicensed fire after sundown unless pre-approved by a local guild master or city inspector. Households were permitted to boil water, warm food, but anything resembling active cooking could land you in serious trouble. Pilaf, though? Pilaf was a gray zone. It didn't have to be fried. You could argue it was simmered. If you used enough oil and patience, you could prepare it low and slow, without a single flare. You watch as your host lifts the lid, the steam puffing upward like a tiny smoke signal. He scoops 2 mounds onto copper plates and sets one before you. Then, for the first time, he smiles. "No one makes it like this anymore," he says, almost wistful. "Now it's all broth and onions. No chestnuts. No patience." You eat slowly. Every bite is a lesson. Not just flavor, but texture, resistance, softness, sweetness, salt. The rice sticks slightly at the bottom, the tadig, prized like crispy treasure. He sees your grin and raises a finger. "Don't scrape the pot too loud," he warns. "Someone might hear." You nod, sheepish. There's a small window high in the back wall. Through it, you glimpse something. A glimmer of metal. A lantern. You speak without thinking. "Someone's coming?" He tenses, doesn't answer, just rises and begins dousing the fire with damp rags, pressing them into the coals, watching steam rise like ghosts. Within seconds the room cools. "You need to leave," he says. "If it's the night watch, I was boiling water for tea. That's it. You don't know me." You stand, heart racing again, the plate still warm in your hands. Go out through the cloth door. Don't turn back. You obey. You slip through a flap of linen into another alley entirely. No footsteps, no lanterns, just the distant murmur of the sea and the slow toll of the third prayer bell of the night. You wonder, was he always a cook, Or was that just one of his lives? There's a theory that some of Istanbul's night cooks were former palace chefs, discharged or dishonored, now making meals for shadows. Others say they were just men who couldn't afford a daytime license, and still others claim the finest underground rice was made by retired janissaries, because they alone had the patience to stir for hours without complaint. Historians still debate this. Some dismiss it as myth, others collect recipes said to originate from these hidden kitchens. Cinnamon rice with shredded duck, mulberry pilaf, even rose petal rice served at secret weddings. You step into an open square now, the cool air brushing your cheek. You exhale, finally full. But ahead, more voices. Laughter, arguing, a bright copper gleam under torchlight. You blink, 2 men, 2 cauldrons, and the unmistakable smell of halva. But this isn't dessert. This is a duel. And the sugar's about to hit the fan. You edge toward the square, drawn by the scent, thick and nutty like roasted flour and scorched sugar, with a smoky richness that clings to the night air like an argument that refuses to die. There, beneath 2 iron torches, set crooked in stone holders, stand 2 men. Each guards a massive copper cauldron, waist high and bubbling. The ground around them is dusted in white powder, sugar, flour, maybe cornstarch. Their sleeves are rolled up, their brows glisten with sweat, and their arms move in slow, furious circles, wooden paddles stirring with the precision of soldiers and the aggression of rivals. You've stumbled onto something rare, a halva duel? Not a metaphor, not a joke. A real, live halvachi face-off. This was a thing? See, halva wasn't just dessert in the Ottoman world. It was status. Served at births, deaths, weddings, circumcisions, promotions, victories, poetry recitals, public punishments, and yes, political announcements. There were at least 11 known varieties in Istanbul alone. Flour halva, semolina halva, tahini halva, even meat halva. Don't ask, it's rare. And halva makers, halva siller, weren't just cooks. They were artisans, performers, local celebrities with loyal followings. And sometimes, when business got slow or boundaries got crossed, they'd battle, not with blades, but with sugar. Tonight, you're watching 2 rival halvacies from different guilds. You know this because of the colored sashes tied around their waists, one red, one green, and from the way they're glaring at each other like gladiators. Their assistants crouch nearby, ready with ladles, trays, and score sheets. Yes, this is organized. One man pours a perfect spiral of pistachio halva onto a polished marble slab, slicing it into diamond shapes with a copper knife. The crowd that's formed, half drunk, mostly sleepy, ooze with admiration. Then the other fires back, a tahini swirl, dark as molasses, drizzled into a shell pattern that almost looks like calligraphy. They're not just cooking. They're sculpting. You overhear a man whisper to his friend, they've been feuding for 7 years, since the wedding incident. You lean in. Apparently, one of the halvacies delivered his product to the wrong side of a bridal banquet, an insult tantamount to treason. Since then, they've refused to operate on the same street. But tonight, someone double-booked the square, and neither backed down. So, here you are, midnight, halva, on, and no permit in sight. Because, make no mistake, this is illegal. Cooking in the open air after curfew, with open flame and unsanctioned equipment, every single part of this scene violates the city's food and fire codes. If the muntasib walks past right now, everyone here, including you, is technically punishable. Fines, equipment confiscation, public naming and shaming. One chronicler even wrote of a halvachi forced to recite a public apology while handing out his rival's desserts to a crowd. But for now, no one's interrupting. In fact, a man in a fez just handed out fig leaf ballots. Historians still argue whether halva duels were tolerated because of tradition, because of bribery, or because, let's be honest, they were fun. Some call them performance art. Others say they were thinly veiled power struggles between urban guilds and local politicians. The halvachi with the red sash adds rose petals to his next batch. A gamble. Floral flavors divide the crowd. You see someone gag politely. Bold move. The green-sashed rival counters with caramelized walnuts. Classic, reliable, very popular with older voters. The tension builds. Steam rises. Someone faints from the sweetness. Then a bell rings. Not a curfew bell. A small handbell, rung by a child perched on a crate. Voting ends. The crowd buzzes. Scores are counted. Pouches exchanged. The winner's name whispered, not shouted. Red sash wins. Barely. The green-sashed man doesn't protest. Just bows stiffly, douses his coals, and disappears into the shadows with the dignity of a man who knows this isn't over. You take a small square of pistachio halva as it's passed around. It's perfect, soft, dense, with a nutty bite and a ghost of lemon, worth every drop of law-breaking. You step away before anyone starts cleaning. Halva cleanup is intense, and you suspect emotionally charged. As you head down a quieter street, the sweetness fades, the city darkens, the square behind you sighs into silence. But as you round the corner, something strikes you. All these rules, all these laws about fire, sugar, rice, figs, yogurt, fish, bread, and snack time, they weren't just about order. They were about peace, about sleep, about keeping the city calm and the Sultan unbothered. Which brings us to the heart of the whole thing. Why all this trouble? Because somewhere, in a silent wing of a vast palace, a man in silk pajamas needed to sleep, and his empire bent itself in half to make sure no one woke him. The road widens as you walk, the night air cooler now, its edges softening toward morning. The sounds have thinned, no more sizzling pans or murmuring vendors, just the quiet of a city that's finally starting to rest. But now, you're thinking about him, the man at the center of it all. The one every bell blade recipe in curfew was ultimately designed to protect. The Sultan. Because behind all the fire codes, the market inspections, and snack time police work, there was one very simple rule. Do not wake the Sultan. It sounds absurd. One man's sleep dictating the entire empire's bedtime? But you have to understand. The Ottoman court was built around silence, a controlled silence. The Sultan was divinely appointed, and even in sleep he was a symbol of cosmic order. If the city was noisy, restless, chaotic, then how could he rest? And if he didn't rest, how could the empire? You reach the base of a high garden wall now, just below the harem quarters of Topkapi Palace. The gardens above are dark, but you can almost sense the presence, an entire court of sleeping bureaucrats, concubines, scribes, guards, eunuchs, and cooks, all paused in a delicate hush. Ottoman courtiers took this seriously. Court protocol forbade sudden movements, hard soles, or loud breath near the private quarters. Pages learned to whisper in 3 registers. Eunuchs communicated in a unique hand gesture system. One palace worker was fired not for stealing, but for snoring. And the city outside the gates? It was expected to comply. That's why there were night silence laws, or sukunet kunalari. They weren't written in the same ink as tax codes, but they were enforced with equal zeal. Anyone caught shouting, clapping, pounding dough, or even playing a flute too late could be warned, fined, or, in rare cases, beat. There's a story, possibly apocryphal, of a man exiled from Istanbul for singing too well at night. The logic? His voice attracted a crowd, the crowd talked. The talking disturbed the neighborhood, the noise drifted toward Topkapi. The result? Banished, with compliments. Historians still argue whether the silence for the Sultan rule was taken this literally or whether it served as a broader metaphor for imperial control. Some say it was simply about fire safety and political stability. Others believe the quietude was a cultivated form of reverence, a way to demonstrate loyalty by muting desire, commerce, and even hunger after hours. But among the people, the rule was very real. That's why food vendors had to whisper their orders, why bakers watched chimneys more than ovens, why a yogurt seller might wrap his jars in wool, not just for insulation, but to muffle clinking. You stand now in a garden path, bordered by lemon trees that haven't yet bloomed. Somewhere above, a bird rustles. You imagine a guard pacing just beyond the harem gate, every step rehearsed to avoid the creak of ancient wood. They say some sultans were heavier sleepers than others. Sultan Abdul Hamid, IH reportedly, slept through an attempted coup. Murad IV, on the other hand, was said to wake at the sound of a candle being snuffed too quickly. And yet, all sultans, slight or deep sleepers, were entitled to undisturbed nights. Because the Ottoman worldview rested on a kind of sacred hierarchy, if the Sultan was at peace, the empire was at peace. If he tossed and turned, so did the provinces. That belief extended to urban design, law enforcement, and yes, snack policy. And so, you understand now, all these nighttime rules, all the flour hidden in basements and halva duels in alleys, all the fig swaps and rice whispers, they weren't just about food. They were about maintaining the illusion of perfect order, smooth and unbroken. Like the surface of a pudding before it's disturbed by the first spoon. You look back one last time at the palace. No light, no sound. The Sultan sleeps. And across the city, thousands of others. Bakers, cooks, vendors, janissaries, lovers, spies, tiptoe around that one slumbering man, hoping they can just finish their fry-up before someone hears. But the city won't stay quiet forever, because soon someone will stir, stretch, and yawn, and hunger never sleeps. Ahead, you see the faint blue blush of the sky beginning to rise, and with it, the city's final illegal snack. You move downhill now, following the slope of the city as it leans toward dawn. The stones are damp beneath your shoes, slick with sea breeze and the sweat of a night lived in whispers. Istanbul is starting to exhale. You feel it, shutters cracking open just a hair, lamps being extinguished, the last of the night vendors slipping into doorways like ghosts, folding back into the parchment of the city. But something lingers. A scent, warm, spiced, familiar. You trail it with practiced instinct now, past the dye seller's quarter and a row of shuttered shoemakers. And then you see it. A man, a cart, a large round tray set above a licked flame. On that tray, rice pudding. transparent The top is caramelized, the edges dark. Each bowl is a shallow copper dish, scorched on the rim, gently bubbling in the center. The smell is rich: milk, cinnamon, something nutty, maybe pine nuts or even orange blossom water. You've found it. The final bite before the call to prayer. This is no vendor, no street cook. He doesn't shout prices or wave customers over. He just stands there, arms crossed, watching his pudding bake. A philosopher disguised as a snack maker. A man who knows he has only minutes before legality returns and the poetry of night food is swept away by the mundane buzz of daylight. You approach. He doesn't flinch, doesn't speak. You nod. He lifts one bowl with tongs, sets it on a stone ledge beside you, and walks away. Just like that. You don't even reach for it at first. You just stare at it, still quivering slightly in the center, the surface cracked like desert soil. It's perfect, too perfect. And then the sound begins. Distant, but undeniable. The first azan, the morning call to prayer, echoing from a minaret on the opposite hill. A sound so ancient and steady it feels like part of the earth itself. It rolls through the alleys, brushes the rooftops, stirs the pigeons in their towers. You take the first spoonful just as the second muezzin joins in. It's warm, slightly sweet, smooth enough to sigh over. The crust yields with a satisfying snap. There's even a hint of smoke in the finish, reminding you this was baked illegally, that someone risked something so you could taste comfort in a copper bowl. Because this pudding is more than pudding. It's closure, a punctuation mark at the end of a sleepless, law-dodging night. There's a phrase in an old Ottoman cookbook, barely legible in the margins. Some foods are for the body, others are for forgetting time. You sit there, listening as the city wakes. A cart creaks past, a rooster tries to join the call to prayer, and is, frankly, off-key. A door slams somewhere in the distance. The quiet is cracking now, splitting open like warm dough. And for the first time all night, you feel full. Not just of food, but of story, of risk, of the strange thrill of breaking a curfew with a spoon and surviving it with a sigh. You stand, placing the empty dish beside the tray. No one's around to collect it. That's the point. You head up the hill now, toward a city reassembling itself for daylight, where bread will be sold legally, yogurt will come in loud wooden carts, and rice will return to its polite, licensed self. But you'll remember the spice trails in the dark, the murmured orders, the halva duel, the boy with the yogurt jars, the pasha chewing secretly on illegal sweetmeats, and the silent, wide-eyed man who knew pudding was worth the risk. And somewhere behind you, in a minaret that caught the last breeze of the night, a watchman leans into the wind and exhales. Because even he, silent, faceless, might have wanted one last bite. You walk slowly now, not out of caution but reverence. The city is no longer dangerous. It's shifting, like the final breath before a yawn. Behind you, last night's shadows shrink into corners. Ahead, Istanbul rubs its eyes and starts to speak again. But not loudly, not yet. You're passing closed storefronts now. Markets, apothecaries, cloth stalls, pastry shops, with shutters pulled low and padlocks still icy from the night. Everything is still under wraps, as though pretending it wasn't awake an hour ago, selling figs from door cracks and boiling rice under tablecloths. You know better. So does the Empire. Because here, in the winding gap between darkness and sun, a different class of cook begins to stir. The ones who never got licenses, never swore guild oaths, never wore official aprons. You're now in the territory of the shadow guilds, the hidden network of night cooks who never stopped feeding the city, no matter the law. Some were legends, some were whispers, all were necessary. You duck through a low arch near a public fountain and smell it, frying onions. Again, always the onions. The truest signal that someone's risking breakfast a bit too early or ending their night a bit too late. There, between two shuttered bathhouses, a man in a faded green vest tends to a clay oven wedged between crates. He's not young, not old. His sleeves are rolled. He doesn't look up. But when he speaks, it's clear. You want eggs with that bread? He's not offering. He's assigning. You nod. In a city of rules, sometimes you follow the ones you're given. He reaches into a basket, pulls out a lump of dough already bulging with cheese and slides it into the oven. You watch it puff like a balloon, its top golden, blistered, its edges whispering secrets to the fire. Beside it, he cracks 2 eggs onto a copper pan, already singing. The smell is pure satisfaction, protein, spice, bread, smoke, the night's last meal, or the day's first rebellion. This man is not part of the registered Bakers Guild. You know because he uses no stamped trays, wears no badge, and operates entirely from memory. His cart has no wheels, his apron bears no crest. He is, by definition, invisible. And yet, his line of customers stretches halfway down the block. A seamstress in slippers, a sailor with a crooked hat, a janissary missing half a boot, a child with a cracked jug meant for milk but clearly full of last night's yogurt. These are not rich people. These are the glue of the city, the ones who can't wait for the official markets to open, who need food before legality starts stretching its limbs. And this man, this cook, with his anonymous fire and wordless service, is their anchor. Ottoman historians rarely mention them. You don't find many primary documents about illegal egg vendors or clandestine pastrymen, but you see their fingerprints everywhere, in recipe variations that never entered court cuisine, in folk songs about the bread that found you at midnight, in the whispered tales of the woman who fried aubergines before the azan and got away with it every time. You eat standing, your back to a warm stone wall. The bread steams in your hand, the eggs molten, the cheese unctuous. It's perfect, of course, the kind of meal that erases the need for clocks. You hear soft singing now. A lullaby? No. A woman humming behind a curtain. Perhaps folding laundry, perhaps just enjoying a moment before her house stirs. This is the magic hour, the bridge, the last sip of secret, and then footsteps, but not the thundering kind. These are measured, steady, leather on stone. A man appears at the end of the alley, dressed in the short blue coat of a muntasib assistant. You freeze. He looks down the alley, sees the oven, sees the cook, sees you. Then he does something strange. He raises one eyebrow and keeps walking. The cook doesn't even flinch. He flips a flatbread with the tip of a knife, adds a pepper to someone else's pan and mutters, "That one's tired, he won't write us up today." Historians still argue whether these nighttime shadow guilds operated with quiet permission, tolerated out of necessity, or existed on sheer force of habit. Some suggest there were backdoor taxes, silent tributes paid to night inspectors in kind. Others say it was simply apathy or a grudging respect, but you're starting to suspect it was something more profound. A city recognizing its own need, not the official one, documented in scrolls and decrees, but the lived one, the hunger that doesn't fit within hours. The cooks who feed not the court, but the city's pulse. You finish your bread, wipe your hands, and as you step into the morning light, you hear it at last. The sound of a real market stall opening. The first legal bite of the day is about to be sold. But you're already full. You emerge onto a cobbled square just as the sun finally spills over the Bosphorus, soft, low, and golden, like melted butter sliding across the rooftops. Seagulls cry overhead. The lanterns are extinguished one by one, and Istanbul, as though stirred from a heavy dream, begins to hum again. You blink in the light, your eyes still shaped by shadows, your ears tuned to whispers. It feels strange now, this openness. The clang of shop shutters, the shouts of water sellers, the rhythmic clop of hooves from the morning bread cart. So loud, so legal, and yet you don't quite trust it. You've spent the night walking through the empire's hidden appetite. You've seen the things no registry records, no scribe copies, no law openly names. The quiet crackle of illegal fires, the secret signals passed in snacks, the gentle rebellion of people who needed to eat when the empire said they shouldn't. Because hunger is not a scheduled emotion. You turn a corner and nearly bump into a pair of official bakers unloading trays of flatbread. Their sleeves bear the Ser Mini crest, proof that they are registered, monitored, state-approved. You nod. They don't nod back. To them, you're just another pedestrian. But you carry a different kind of memory now, of the Borik Korea, delivering dissent in flaky folds, of the halva duel, sugar boiling hotter than politics, of the yogurt runners, cloaked in wool and secrecy, and of course the silent pudding, your final spooned secret. Historians might call all this peripheral culture, the barely documented fringe of an otherwise grand imperial narrative, but you know better. You've walked it, tasted it, traced the outlines of empire not through palaces or pashas, but through forbidden fig baskets and coals doused before dawn. You sit on a low bench now, near a fountain whose stone lips trickle cool water into a cracked basin. Around you, Istanbul resumes its rhythm. Legal bread is sold, authorized rice is measured. The janissaries return to daytime posturing, their nighttime whispers swallowed by sunlight. And you just sit and breathe. You've eaten everything the night had to offer. You've seen how even the most powerful laws must bow to the reality of cravings. You've seen that food is never just food, its identity, its resistance, its community. It's a bribe, a message, a memory, a promise. And now, as the city brightens and your lids grow heavy, you feel something unexpected. That is fine and safe. The last thing you notice before your head tips slightly to one side, eyes fluttering shut, is a bread seller humming the same tune the pudding man stirred into his pot. A lullaby. And perhaps, if you do dream, you'll smell the faint scent of chickpeas again. Or maybe, just maybe, someone will sneak you one last piece of lokma. Still warm, still sweet, still absolutely illegal. And now, let it all go. Let the smell of cinnamon and coal drift backward, soft and slow, until it's only a suggestion in the breeze. Let the shadows of the alleys pull away, fading like ink in tea, until the city is nothing more than a quiet silhouette on the edge of memory. The sizzle fades, the footsteps still. Even the distant minaret falls silent. The empire, so full of rules and rituals, is sleeping again. Let your body sink deeper, as if you're lying not in your own bed, but on a rooftop mat in Galata, the stone still warm beneath you from the day's sun. You hear the Bosphorus now, just faintly, lapping at the docks like a lullaby spoken in water. The voices you met tonight, whispered, laughing, arguing over pastry and pride, they're all returning to their homes. Their fires are out, their secrets kept. There's nothing more to chase, no more bells, no more bites, only breath. You're part of the city now, its rhythm, its hush, its stories. And whether the laws were written in ink or sugar, whether the Sultan stirred in his sleep or not, you made it through the night, full, quiet, unseen. You are safe. You are still. You are done.